What's up, Miami detectives, psychopaths, and forensic pathologists? Welcome back to Fantasy Files Reacts. This is the show that we take off the bench once in a while when a TV show or a video game or something pops up that interests us enough to talk about. I am your host today, Spencer, joined by Nick Henderson from the Dexter Daily and also the 4-Player Podcast. And we're here to talk about Dexter Original Sin, the new spin-off show that gives us Dexter's origin story. We'll be talking about episodes 1 through 3, and everything from the main series is fair game to talk about, so please be aware of spoilers in this episode. I'll also say that as of the time of this recording, the 4th episode has come out, and I did not know that. I thought they were taking a week off. So we'll be talking about 4 and 5 next time. So there won't be any spoilers for 4 in this one. But you guys can feel free to talk about 4 in the comments, because I will have definitely watched it by the time this gets posted. As always, our links to our socials like Twitter and Discord are linked below, as is our Patreon, where you can watch these episodes live as we record them. You don't have to wait for the week or sometimes 2 or 3 weeks that it takes for a video to get out to YouTube. You get to join us live and talk in the chat and hang out with us. Also down in the description is all of Nick's links, and that's going to be like his Twitter, like Dexter Daily, the 4-Player Podcast, all of that. So go check him out there. We've had him on the podcast a couple times, and I'll introduce him here in a second. But yeah, I guess without further ado, let's introduce Nick, and we'll talk about our favorite serial killer.
Let's do it.
I'm so excited to talk about the new Dexter show. But first, Nick, so you've been on a couple times now, or more than a couple times, because you joined us for like a Creators Corner episode, and then you came on for Dexter New Blood and for The Last of Us.
The Last of Us, yeah, that was a big one.
Dude, that was so much fun. I had so much fun talking about that show. Also, when is the second season? Have we heard
No date
anything?
yet. No date yet, but they're saying first quarter, I think, of 2025. 2025. Yeah. What year is this? 2025.
Yeah.
So I would
So
imagine
they're saying soon.
Yeah, if I had to guess,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say April or May.
Oh, okay.
That's my guess. Maybe not first quarter, but
Sure.
sometime in the first half of 2025, I'm guessing, is when that'll start. But
Okay. Do you think, is it unusual to not have a release date when it's that close? When do they usually do a release?
I think it can be unusual, but I don't think I don't think most shows have kind of like the what's the word I'm looking for? They don't have like the momentum, and they don't have the reputation as something like The Last of Us. Like that's kind of like Game of Thrones for them. Like it's another like they knocked it out of the park, won all the awards, amazing show. And I think they can just kind of
They
do
can
whatever
shadow
they want.
drop it.
I hate to say this, but it's almost like it's like the Taylor Swift of TV shows. Like they don't even have to announce. Like they could drop it tomorrow, and it would still be the most viewed show of the year, probably.
Right.
So we might not find out for a couple months still, but it might be like, hey, get ready because next month.
Yeah.
And then we'll be watching it. So.
Oh my God, I'm so ready for it. We won't go into this too far. I'm nervous about how they're gonna do Bella Ramsey for the second season, because she doesn't quite look like an older Ellie. But I'm ready for them to make me a believer.
I think their general approach is that they cast Abby's character as someone who is kind of like a similar build to Bella Ramsey, to kind of not make it seem, because Bella Ramsey's a little bit different of a build, different kind of character than she is in the game. So I think they kind of did the same thing with Abby. They're probably just going to make both of them get really buff.
Yeah.
Which I'm here for. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, let's introduce you a little bit. So you write for the Dexter Daily. Do I understand that correctly?
I am a contributor. So
okay.
So Dexter Daily, John is kind of like he has been like the one-man band taking care of Dexter Daily since I don't even remember when he started. He started it sometime in the middle of the original series run. And he's so on top of it. I don't even know how he does it. But it over time during the original run, it kind of became like this go-to space that was like the most up to date website, I would say, for anything Dexter related, to the point where it's like people who write and produce for the show or like have their eye on it, and they're he's posting stuff, like he's posting about stuff like as soon as it you know
Yeah.
even before like most places have picked it up. In fact, a lot of places that report on this stuff get it like they see
From
posted on
Dexter
Dexter Daily
Daily.
first, and then it kind of spirals out from there.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's been kind of a one man band taking care of that, and then he reached out to me when um sometime in between when New Blood was announced and New Blood started, and it was very much kind of a, hey, I see you tweet about Dexter a lot, would you be interested in helping me during the new season? Because at this point it had been like 8 years since the original show had ended, and the site had still existed, but it had basically been dormant. There was nothing to report, there was nothing to talk about really. um, but he's like, I want to bring it back, but my life's changed, I'm changed, I have a full-time job, I can't really do all this stuff on my own. So he asked me if I'd be willing to help, and I was like, sure, of course.
Yeah.
Tell me what to do, boss.
Yeah.
So we ended up coming to an agreement, and I was like, I'll write weekly reviews and recaps, and you can just focus on churning out like updates and news and stuff, because there's lots of like casting updates and filming updates, and like people are sending him like behind the scene photos, like taken with blurry cell phone. People are literally sending him like blurry cell phone photos from like where they're filming. Stuff.
Really?
Yeah. So he's always got stuff to talk about and report. So I was there to kind of help him, just do, because he was like, I'd like to review, but I don't think I can have time. So I was like, I love talking about Dexter, so I will absolutely do that. And then it ended up kind of becoming fortuitous. He he lives overseas, and he got invited to the premiere of New Blood, but he couldn't accept because it was like they asked him like a week before the premiere, which was in New York City. And this was like right at the beginning. This was in November 1st of 2020. What was that? 2021.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about this, and you got to go to the premiere and meet
He
Michael
basically
C.
was
Hall.
like, yeah. Well, I didn't meet Michael C. Hall there. I have met
Oh,
Michael C. Hall, but I had to pay. I was one of those things where I went to like a fan convention, and it was like you could pay to like meet and greet the
okay, yeah,
actors, whatever. So like I have met him, but it was very much in kind of a
sure,
pay to meet the meet him capacity.
yeah,
But I did. He was in the. So I went to the premiere. He was there. He was actually sitting in the row directly in front of me, but he was like at the opposite side of the uh, the hall, I
yeah.
suppose. So I do have a blurry cell phone picture of him from a distance, but I did meet Batista, David Zayas. I did meet I did Eric King, James Dokes,
Oh,
uh,
cool.
Scott Reynolds, who's the producer and writer. He's been on the series since the very beginning. You'll see his name in the opening credits. So yeah, I did meet a lot of people, and it was great. And I got to watch the first episode a week early, in a room full of people who worked on the show and a bunch of fans who came as well. And yeah, it was and with Michael C. Hall. That's
Yeah,
cool. Got to
that's
watch the first
awesome.
episode with Michael C. Hall, technically.
That's so
Um,
great.
and let me tell you, the if you recall back to the very first episode of New Blood, the like they don't give you kind of the inner monologue for a long time
Yeah,
and
that's right.
whatnot,
And then it comes back.
and it comes back in the very specific moment you hear his inner monologue speak for the first time, and it was like in a room full of Dexter nerds, it was like the Avengers Endgame moment with the hammer, right? People
Yeah,
just lost their minds, and
lost it.
I
Yeah.
was like, oh my god, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Oh my
Um,
God.
so yeah, great stuff. Just like that was all purely because of John at Dexter Daily, who asked me to be a
Yeah.
part of it, and then just kind of things worked out, and I was happy to go on his behalf and kind of represent Dexter Daily there. And then obviously Original Sin was announced, and I was like, shall we just continue where we left off? And he was like,
Right?
yes, please. So here we are.
Oh my
Um,
God. That's so cool.
that's kind
Yeah,
of how that came about.
I've seen your articles pop up, and even before the show like officially aired, I had been reading a bunch of Dexter Daily articles on stuff you're talking about, like the casting and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, um And then real quick, you also do the Four Player Podcast. And,
Yes.
we talked about this quite a bit on your Creators Corner episode. If anybody would like to check it out, I'll put it in the annotations up here somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, how's that going?
Great. I mean, we're still doing our thing week to week. And we've been doing that since 2008. Although I say week to week, we didn't do one last week, but it was Christmas.
Yeah,
So yeah, we record our podcast on usually Tuesday nights, 8
hmm
p.m. On twitch.tv/4playerpodcast. All
nice.
spelled out, because when we started this podcast, they wouldn't let you put numbers in the
Right.
your
Yeah,
channel
yeah.
name on Justin TV before it became Twitch.
Right.
So we had to spell it out, and now we hate it.
That's
So
funny.
twitch.tv/4playerpodcast, all spelled out.
Okay.
So yeah, we do that every Tuesday night. Talk about the games that we're playing and enjoying, or maybe not enjoying,
Yeah.
and all the various industry news and just things that we're into, but the video game industry. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, we're doing one tomorrow night because Tuesday is of course New Year's Eve. So
Oh,
tomorrow
yeah.
night we're doing our last show of the year. um, which nothing special. Because we haven't got together to talk about it for 2 weeks, but so we're just going to talk about games again, and we also do our fantasy critic, which if you're
Yeah.
not familiar is like
Fantasy football, but
fantasy
games
football.
Metacritic. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Video games, and you use Metacritic scores to kind of
Yeah.
uh, figure out points and stuff, which is super dumb but super fun.
Yeah.
We've been doing that with our community and Discord and stuff. So yeah, we're gonna kind of cap that off tomorrow night and
Nice.
talk about games. So yeah, things are going good.
Have you guys done your like top fives for the year or anything?
Not yet. So the way we usually do it, because we're usually playing stuff and trying to cram stuff in all the way up until the last day of the year. So
Right.
we usually convene in January. We usually do an award show where we just kind of run through our own like fun categories and talk about our personal choices there. And then we each, not all of us, but some of us do top 10 videos, where we really get to kind of like give our thoughts on our top 10 games of the year.
Right.
So I really enjoy doing those, and I have my list kind of figured out, but I have like 2 spots left, which I feel like I could slide like 6 or 7 different games into those 2 slots. So I've really got to kind of figure out how I
Yeah.
feel about some stuff. But yeah, January is usually our month for like kind of looking back at the year in the rearview mirror, I suppose.
Very cool. And then tomorrow, does the Metacritic end, or like the
I
the
think so.
fantasy?
I don't think there's any more games dropping between now and Tuesday
Mm,
that would count.
right.
And I think all of our lists are full. Dude, it's so bad. I was in first place for like most of the year in our
Oh,
fantasy critic right now. I was riding high, and then the wheels came off. And the person
yeah.
in last place, which is me, is the you have to. I think what we agreed on is the person who comes in last has to stream the game on their list that they
That crashed
drafted.
them.
That not necessarily. Well, I guess it could. Yeah, I get the worst scoring game on their list. They have to stream
Oh.
that game. And I don't even know what that game would be at this point. I have to look at my list. But yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna ask what was the game that crashed you?
I don't know. I will look that up though, and I don't want to derail the podcast while I'm trying
Sure.
to figure that out. But I will let you know when I find it. Last
Yeah.
year, it kind of happened. I didn't come in last place last year, but I had drafted Redfall last year.
Oh no.
Yeah, that kind of fucked
What a
me.
decision.
Yeah, I mean, I love Arcane. I mean, it's
Yeah.
Arcane. They made
I
Dishonored.
know. I
Uh,
know.
and it was made here in Austin too. And I was like, represent, please. And
Yeah.
no, they failed.
But
So the game. This is honestly the thing that really killed me in my league this year.
mhm.
Is This is where the wheels really started to come off the bus for me. It was when they delayed Assassin's Creed Shadows.
Oh
Uh,
no.
and yeah, so and a few things that were not great happened one after another. That was one of them.
Yeah.
But the game that scored the lowest for me is a game that I picked up like a month ago because I had a spot to fill and I was running out of options, and I drafted the Spirit of the Samurai, which is sitting at a 52 on Open Critic. Uh,
Wow.
and the way the points work, that's not good. If it's below a 70, it's bad. You're losing
Yeah.
points. So I've lost about 18 points because of that game.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
no.
So that really killed me. But yeah, so I'm gonna be streaming Spirit of the Samurai at some point. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, that's so funny. I don't even know what that game is. I've never heard
But
of it.
it's like a side-scrolling Metroidvania, but it's like
Okay.
claymation style, like
Oh,
animation
okay.
style, which looks really cool. Like it looks like it should be awesome, like it should be a home
Yeah.
run. But I don't know what went wrong. But I guess I'm gonna find out because I'm gonna play it. So
That's so funny. What a great punishment.
yeah, I mean it's we like to play games, so
Yeah.
I'll make the best of it.
All right, well let's talk about some Dexter here.
Yes.
So we've or at least I've only seen the first 3 episodes. I think you've seen the fourth one, I would
I have
assume.
seen the fourth one. And
Okay.
to be clear, so because I told you earlier before we started recording that
Uh-huh.
I've watched each episode up
Like
to at least 3 times, and
yeah.
that's mostly because I'm writing those reviews for Dexter Daily. So
Right,
like
yeah.
I'll usually just watch it and not like I'll just kind of like take it in
Yeah.
and enjoy it, and then like I'll wait. Sometimes I do it later that day, like later that night, or sometimes I'll wait till the next day and I'll watch it again. And
Yeah.
I'll start writing, and I'll be like, okay, I need to kind of like refill my,
Right.
whatever creative juices, whatever. I'll watch it a third time.
Right.
So I've watched episode 4 twice at this point, but I will not. I know what happens in it, so I will.
Okay.
I will keep that a
Thank
secret.
you. I appreciate that.
It is a great episode, though. I'll tell you that.
Awesome.
Spoiler alert,
Okay.
it's a great episode.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm literally gonna watch it as soon as we get off this call.
Sweet.
What so both of us are huge Dexter fans. Like I've been watching Dexter since I was like 19 maybe. I'm 32
Damn.
now.
Yep.
And I love this show. Like it's probably my either it's between Dexter and Scrubs for my number one favorite show of all time.
Those are very different things, but
I know,
I respect
very
it.
different. But I love Scrubs so much. But yeah, they both fight for the number one spot, and so I'm a huge Dexter fan. You're obviously a huge Dexter fan. You have a Dexter tattoo, don't you?
I have 2 Dexter tattoos. Actually, remember, this is funny. This is actually maybe your fault.
Oh no!
I tweeted this thing that I just kind of made or whatever.
Yeah.
Random design that I made.
Oh, the blood slide?
The blood slice thing. And you were like, hey, that looks good as a tattoo. And I was like,
Yes!
shit, he's right. And I've done it. I have
Yes!
the blood slide tattoo on my arm here now.
Let's go! I'm so glad I made that happen.
I mean, I had that thought too, and somebody else had said it, and then you said it. So you were just like the straw that broke the camel's back. But I was like,
that's so great. Oh, I love it. So, can I see it?
It's kind of hard to.
Oh yeah,
it's upside down from the camera angle here, and I've actually still got to go back to have a little bit of shading done on it. But it's like it's so fresh that like it's only been like fully healed for a couple weeks.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, so I'm probably gonna go back in January and have some shading done on it. But
very cool. I just got into tattoos this year. I have 2 of them now.
Nice.
I have a cardinal on my arm for my friend that passed away that I told you about, and then I have one on my shoulder or whatever, like this kind of area for my favorite book series, the Dresden Files. He has like this amulet that he wears all the time, and so I got the amulet on my shoulder.
Did I ever show you my Last of Us tattoo? Because it's in the same spot.
Yeah, I think
I don't know if I don't know if I can. Oh god.
Yeah, I would love to.
It's where's my camera? So it's the moth and Ellie's switchblade knife with Joel's watch and cracked watch in the background with the ferns going up the sides. So
that looks so good.
Yeah. So
yeah,
tattooing is definitely one of those things that everyone always tells you like if you don't understand it, you'll get and you decide to get one, like suddenly you're like, oh my god, what's my next one? Like you can't stop.
I know. I literally I said when I because the cardinal was the first one I got, and I said I just want to get the cardinal. I had my friend that passed away had the exact same tattoo, and so I wanted his cardinal tattoo. And I was like, I just want to get this tattoo. I really have no interest in getting any other tattoos like at all. I just want this because of this reason.
Yeah.
And then I got it, and I was like, it was almost immediately like, what's my next
what else could I do? Yeah.
Oh, it happens so quick.
It gets away. It's funny. Like my wife and I are, but like she's the exact same way. We've been kind of like
Mhm.
tit for tat. Like I get a tattoo, she gets a tattoo. So she has
Oh.
at this point I have 4, she has 3, but I have a
Yeah.
feeling she'll get a 4th one in the not too distant future.
It's really hard to not get a tattoo when your friend gets one. Like when I visited for Christmas just a few days ago, Gabe, we went to a tattoo artist because he wants one of his tattoos touched up.
Yeah.
Um, and so he was like talking to this artist, he's gonna get it done in March. And so then I was like, I could fly out here for a tattoo. And so I talked to this artist that I really wanted to go to over in Seattle. We just drove down the street and went and talked to this other artist. And I was like, maybe we schedule something with this guy.
There you go.
It's so like,
I totally get it. I totally
yeah,
get it.
it's amazing. I saw the, I'm gonna have to find out who your artist is. Have they done all your tattoos?
All but the blood slides. So my artist that I've used for my other 3 actually just moved to Florida. So
Oh,
I
fuck.
don't know.
Okay.
Although I thought to myself because I was like I might like because I have a bigger Dexter tattoo on my leg.
Oh,
And I was
okay.
like, if Original Sin is good and if Resurrection is good, I might consider like
Yeah.
expanding that one.
Right.
Maybe turning it into like a little bit of a
Yeah,
sleeve on like around my calf and stuff.
for sure.
And I was like, if I decide to do that, then maybe I'll fly to Florida to get it done.
Yeah, I
Uh,
would too. I don't know if I'd fly as far as Florida, but like I would fly to Seattle for a tattoo or something because
yeah,
a lot of the artists I'm in like bumfuck nowhere. And so a lot of the artists around here are like they're fine, but they're not like super super good. And so I'm like I want like a really quality piece. I want to fly to like California or
there you go.
Seattle or something.
Treat yourself.
Yeah. But anyways, what do we think of Dexter Original Sin?
Oh yeah, that's what we're here to talk about. Oh man, I don't know. Where do you want to start? I guess is the question.
I guess my first bullet point here is casting.
Mm.
And you and I had gone back and forth on Twitter a lot. And I love these like friendly disagreements that you and I can have because you and I are good friends at this point, but sometimes we don't see things exactly the same way, which is fine. And I was like, I do not see this guy as Dexter. Like I
Hmm.
just don't. Like it's just not clicking for me. And then you sent me some pictures of like some side by sides, and I was
That
like,
was
okay,
literally when I sent you those pictures. That was
yeah,
the day those pictures became public, and
yeah.
I had not seen them anywhere. And John Dexter Daily just like sent them to me. He was like,
Oh,
"Look at this," and I was like, "What
oh
the fuck?"
shit.
And then like fortuitous, like a few minutes later or something, you had, or it's later that
Yeah.
day or something, you had said something about you can't see it, and I was like, look at these screenshots,
Oh my God,
and I
that's
sent it to
so
you,
funny.
and I remember it because I sent you one of the screenshots, which is actually from episode 3. Now we know this
Oh,
now.
funny. Yeah,
It was the kill room scene.
right.
And it was the picture was the screenshot of the camera. The picture was taken from a little bit farther away,
Oh,
where
okay.
he's standing over Tony Ferrer as he's on the kill table or whatever.
Yeah.
And I sent you that picture, and you were like, "That's Michael C. Hall, right?" And I was like, "What? No, no,
No.
no, it's not." I mean, I get it. It's a little bit far away.
Sure.
It's a little bit harder to tell. But I was like, "That's." I feel
But
like that says something.
yeah, it
Uh,
does say something. And then like when we got I mean, I was kind of on board like after you sent those pictures, I was like, okay, I'm on board to like keep an open mind and see where cuz before I was like, nope, no way. I don't see it at all. I don't like this at all. Like I just completely closed-minded to it. And
to
then
be
you
honest,
sent that.
I was not quite like to that point, right? Where I wasn't,
Sure.
I'm like there was nothing that I was where I was going to be like, well, I'm so turned off to this, I'm not going to watch it. Like that was never going to
Sure.
happen.
Yeah, that was never going to happen.
Um,
Yeah.
but I wasn't like immediately sold. Like, yep, this is the guy, or like
Right.
on any of the casting. Well, I'm when they announced Christian Slater as Harry, I was like, okay, that's pretty fucking good.
Interesting. Okay, cuz I feel like he's one of the ones I love Christian Slater.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like he's one of the ones where I'm like, he doesn't quite match the vibe
So
that I
that
forget what the
reaction,
original actor
James Remar. So that
James
reaction
Remar.
was not me saying, "Oh, Christian Slater's a dead ringer for James Remar," because that's not the case. I don't think that's what they're going for really with anybody in the cast. I mean, there's a couple that I think just worked out that way.
Yeah. I don't mind the looks as much. I just think like the general vibe.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
So like my reaction to Christian Slater was purely from a like, I love Christian Slater. Christian
Yes.
Slater has already done the like father figure in a drama
Mr.
that I like
Robot.
in Mr. Robot, and I was like, this is
Yes.
actually really cool.
Yeah.
Even though I don't think he really looks a ton like James Remar,
Yeah.
I'm cool with it. And that was kind of, I
Sure.
feel like that kind of like opened the door for me being more open to like, okay,
Open-minded.
these characters don't necessarily need to look exactly. And I feel like their approach. I mean, and I think this is the right approach to take when you're going to do something like this, do a prequel for something that is already beloved. Like you can't really go into it thinking we got to find people that look exactly like him, because then like what if they're shitty actors? Like
Right.
what if we find someone that's a dead ringer for Michael C. Hall, but they're not a good actor? I think they were coming at it from this perspective of like, let's find someone that like can embody the character well and sell you on the mannerisms and you know, just make the character his own, and everything else will just kind of fall into place, hopefully. Because you know, this show is like it's supposed to be like 20 years prior to when we first meet Dexter in the first season, so like, and I know people don't really change like physically that much typically, right? So but like you can at least tell like, okay, he probably looked a lot different then, and at some point you just kind of have to be like, you know,
I think there's a balance to strike, right? Like there's, for me, I think you can find really good actors that still look like the original actor. Like some of the stuff that we're hearing, I don't know if you've been following the like Harry Potter casting for the HBO show.
A little bit. I don't know if they haven't made any of that official yet, right? It's just kind of
no,
like
it's
rumors.
not. It's not official. It's speculation. But at the same time, I'm just like, everyone's like, but what if they're all really good actors? I'm like, that could be. But I think you could also find really good actors who at least look more similar to like Dumbledore and stuff than what they're showing us.
I will say this. I think this is again a bit of a tangent, but like talking about Harry Potter, like it's a little bit different in that situation because they're literally retelling the same story. Like it's a different interpretation of a story we already know. So like you're not trying to like you don't want to find someone who looks exactly like Daniel Radcliffe, right? You just want you want to find somebody else who embodies the character. But they are basing it off a book, and those books have descriptions of those characters, and sometimes if they deviate too dramatically, it can be very noticeable. I know one of those characters. I know they're talking about the actor who's rumored to be playing Snape.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and
that one's a big hot topic.
It's a big deviation.
Yeah.
But you know, we'll see how it goes. It's one of those things. Whenever these kinds of shows happen, it's like all of these. The dream is that the people who are making the show care about the show and care about the character. Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure there are shows out there where people are just doing it for a paycheck, right? I mean, obviously that's what everyone's doing it for. But like, like when it comes to Dexter, I can tell you right now that like the original creator of showrunner from the show, who did seasons 1 through 4, and then famously left the show after season 4. And if you remember how season 4 of Dexter ends, that's quite a point to just leave.
Right. Yeah.
So he is now back fully on board, and I know Clyde Phillips, who the person I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know all the circumstances, but I know there was some talk of he left the show to spend more time with his family, which is obviously very important, right? So he left the show, and then they had other people come in, and that's kind of like why there's a kind of a dramatic shift in like the approach and the kinds of things they do with the character and the story or whatever. And a lot of people take issue with those things, and I totally get it.
Sure.
And then he famously came back to do New Blood at this point, which would have been like, so I don't know,
4 years ago,
over a decade. It'd been New Blood would have been over a decade after he left,
right?
At the end of season 4. So he came back, and he's fully on board for New Blood, and now he's back for Original Sin. He's back for Resurrection, and I can
Yeah.
tell you right now, every single thing that he has been kind of like the creative
Voice on.
voice on, I've loved.
Yeah.
You
Same.
know, like just like and you may take issue with some decisions. I know the ending of New Blood is famously very divisive, and I
I was
understand
one of the
why.
people that liked it. I
Me
really
too.
liked
I
the ending of New Blood.
great, and I think that's great. I think the issue, and I think we could probably agree on this, is it probably needed another 2 or 3 episodes
Yeah.
because they switched from a 12 episode series to a 10,
Yeah.
and that point where they ended episode 9 was great, and
Yeah.
then but going from the end of episode 9 to the end of episode 10 felt like, okay, there needed to be
Yeah.
more, there needed to be
Yeah.
something to kind of get us from point A to point B,
I
but
would
they kind
agree.
of rushed it, so everything in episode 10 feels a little like, okay, that's a little fast.
Yeah.
And I get it, but kind of like his instinct when it comes to like the character and the arc and the story they're telling, I think has always been spot on.
Yeah.
So he's back with Original Sin. Scott Reynolds, who is the producer on the show, who's been the one of the executive producers on the show since day one in 2006. He's been doing it the whole time. He
Yeah.
is right back here with Original Sin. And you can tell when you hear him talk about it, like he loves this character. He loves the show. He's super passionate about it. He's super excited to be continuing the story.
Yeah.
He's back. So I just got to feel like when it comes to the casting, the conversations that are happening there are very much like, what's best? Like we could try and find someone who looks like him, sure, but like that isn't necessary. Maybe it shouldn't be the priority. The priority should be
Yeah.
finding someone who embodies the character, who can sell the character, who can sell the story. And I think for the most part, that's what they've done here.
Yeah, I do too. And as far as like Clyde Phillips and all that goes, I think didn't they say, wasn't it at the end of New Blood, and I think Michael C. Hall was included in this. They said like, we're not gonna keep going unless we happen to find like a really, really, really good story. They were only gonna do a spin-off or something if they had something really legit to go with.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk kind of like about what really transpired there, and
Mhm.
let's be real.
Sure.
I like the end of New Blood
Hmm.
personally. I think it's really poetic and beautiful, just maybe a little rushed.
Sure.
But the reason this is all happening, the reason Original Sin exists, and more importantly, the reason that Resurrection exists,
It's because of the fan outcry.
is because of the fan outcry from the ending of the original. And I'm gonna be
Yeah.
honest, and I'm gonna go on record here.
Okay. Okay.
A lot of that outcry is very misguided because
Oh.
there's a certain subset. I'm not saying everybody. There's a certain
Uh-huh.
subset of those people who are very verbally outraged, who were outraged for the wrong reasons. They were outraged because they think that Dexter is some sort of hero that deserves to get away with everything, and that
Oh,
they felt that he was
yeah.
done dirty.
Right.
Really, what that translates to is we don't want to see this guy who's been murdering people
Right.
for
Yeah.
most of his life. We don't want to see him
Just get away.
answer for his crimes.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people, especially in the original series, before we knew any of this other stuff afterwards existed,
Yeah.
everybody was like, this is obviously building up to a final season where he's like being
Gonna die.
pursued, he's going to be arrested, he's going to die, he's going to be
Yeah.
in the like there is a this isn't even a rumor. We've like Clyde Phillips has talked about his original vision for the ending of Dexter, which was him being strapped into the electric chair,
Oh
and they
shit.
pull the curtains back, and he's sitting in front of a glass, the glass window, right, where the audience kind of sits there to watch,
Yeah.
and it's like he's seeing all of his victims like standing
Oh.
there, and he gets fried that was his, like, because
Wow.
this was after he left, and someone was like, well, we know how it ended, and everybody
Yeah.
hated the original ending, and they were
Yeah.
like, what would you have done? And he was like, well, I always had this vision of this happening, and people like
Wow.
latched onto that. But
That's
like
amazing.
the people who latched onto that were like, yeah, that's really cool, that's really poetic, like that's
Yeah.
neat, but it
Yeah.
still required him to die.
Right.
And then the people who were outraged about New Blood, and again, I don't want to upset anybody because I know there's a lot of
Sure.
people out there who are mad about the right things, who are like, okay, it felt rushed, and the character didn't deserve that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who are like, Dexter can't die. He's a hero. And it's like, no,
Yeah, I
you're
don't I
missing
don't
the
think
point.
I don't think that's the right reason. I think that the reasons that again, I liked the ending to New Blood. The ones that I've heard that have actually like carried some weight are the ones that go into detail about like this just isn't what Dexter's character would do. He wouldn't let his son like shoot him, or like he would figure out this other thing, like he would have figured out a way out of this or whatever. And people
But
that go into detail on that, it's like, okay, but at some point
at
he
some
has to get
point,
caught.
yeah, at some point he's not going to be able to find his way out of this. Like that's
Right.
like if you
That's the
truly in
point.
your heart of hearts believe that he will always figure a way out of every situation,
Yeah.
where's the stakes? Where's the drama? Where is
Right.
the like I get it. Like
Yeah.
and again, I think that final decision at the end of New Blood was so controversial.
Yeah.
The real reason it was controversial is because it got there too fast.
Right.
Like he in
It
episode
need more
9,
setup.
he essentially murders someone with the help of his son, and his son is kind of on board for everything and being like, "Oh yeah, my dad is Batman." And
Right.
then episode 10, he's like, "I'm gonna shoot Batman because holy shit,
This is
you're a
crazy.
monster."
Yeah.
And like that he went from like, okay,
Yeah,
this
that
is
happened too
wrong.
quickly.
Yeah, like the dots are connected. They were
Right.
just connected very quickly.
Right.
Um, and I don't want to sit here and talk about New Blood forever because we're here to talk about
Yeah.
Original Sin.
Yeah,
But
let's talk about Original Sin.
Original Sin exists
Yeah.
because they were like, well, Dexter is our Showtime was like Dexter is our most successful series ever. It's their Game of Thrones, right? It's
Right.
their thing. The character has a place in the zeitgeist that people care about. We can't let it end with people being upset like this.
Right.
And I'm going to be honest. I think we're going to get to an end again.
Yeah.
Because whether Resurrection is 1 season or 2 seasons or 3 seasons or whatever the hell,
Yeah.
we're going to get to an end again.
Yeah.
People are still going to be pissed.
Yeah, people are still going to be pissed.
But Clyde Phillips has talked, again, very openly about this and been like, when we did New Blood, it was made very clear to me that I only have Michael C. Hall for 1 year, for one
Yeah.
season.
Right.
I'll do it. And
how do you think they convinced Michael C. Hall to come back? I mean, money, obviously,
money.
but yeah.
Obviously money.
Yeah.
I think Michael C. Hall also has a certain attachment
Love
to the
for
character.
Dexter. Yeah.
I mean, even though I think the man is ready to move on, I
Yeah.
think New Blood was supposed to be his out.
Right.
I also think I think in my heart of hearts, I think he is probably like, well, people didn't like the ending. I don't want
Yeah.
that to be the end.
Yeah.
But
right.
he's like, I don't want that to be the end, but you're gonna have to pay me some serious fucking money to give me
Right.
back to do this. And
Yes.
I think that's fine because
Yeah.
I don't think Michael C. Hall is the kind of person to mail in a performance. He does not
No.
mail in performances. The man is great at what he does.
Yeah.
Go watch the movie Gamer, which is fucking awful. But I can tell you one thing: that movie's bad, but Michael C. Hall's performance has nothing to do with why it's bad.
Oh, wow.
He went hard in that movie. Have you ever seen that movie?
Is that the one where there's like a virtual reality gamer? Like,
I don't even something like that. I don't even remember
Okay.
the circumstances of it, but he's the bad guy in that movie.
Yeah.
It's not a good movie. Like it's just a bad script. But like
Yeah.
Michael C. Hall goes 150%. Like
That's
he goes
so amazing.
he goes hard. But like the movie is bad. So like
Oh my
Michael C.
God.
Hall,
I'm gonna have to watch
he
it.
is not he's not going to show up for Dexter Resurrection and mail it in. He's like,
Right. Yeah.
write the scripts, come up with something that people can get behind,
Yeah.
give me the money for it, and
Yeah.
I will be there and I'll sell it. That is right now what I'm telling myself. But
That's amazing.
I also kind of I feel that. Like I do really think that's the case.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, they literally start filming Dexter Resurrection next week.
Yeah, that's wild. That's fucking crazy.
And it's supposed to come out summer of 2025, which means June, July, August, somewhere in there.
Right.
So
God,
like
I'm
we're not
so
going to be waiting
ready.
long. It's
I'm so
exciting.
ready.
But anyways, again, Original Sin.
Okay, so let me give my just like general thoughts on the casting real quick because Patrick, I think he won me over as Michael C. Hall. So many little like micro mannerisms, like his little shrug or his wink or his just like
I can tell you maybe
boss,
the scene. I can tell you the scene where like the mannerism he did where I was like, that's fucking Michael right there.
What
That's
was the
it.
scene?
It was in episode 3 where he lures Tony Farrar into the back of the bar and he shoots
Yeah.
the gun at him through the tree.
Yes.
And there's one when the slow-mo happens and you see the bullet flying past his head and you just see the
Yeah.
smirk on his face. He's like, it
Right.
worked.
He's like, got you.
And then after Tony leaves and because he was pretending to be all scared and he like picks himself up off the ground and like kind of like looks and like dusts his shoulder off or whatever.
Yes.
And then just had this like smile. I was like,
that's Michael C. Hall.
That's it right there. That's the moment.
One of the ones from episode 3 that I was like, damn, that's so Michael C. Hall, is when all of Deb's friends are like doing the coke and they're like, do you want any? And he's like, nope, I already got it. And it kind of like does his little, he has like this way of like dropping one shoulder.
Yeah.
And like kind of like this little like, ooh, just like little shrug, like I don't know how to do it, but like it was so Michael C. Hall.
Yeah.
And then like
I could picture Michael C. Hall doing
that
exact thing where he's like, nope, I've already done it. You're good.
Yeah, I'm good. And then of course, like the very first one that got me was put me to work, boss. Like that was so boss, Michael C. Hall. And just a million other things. Just a little
the scene when he first comes to this first crime scene and he's walking around and he sees the body and you just see that like smile, like glee on his face. Like, I was like, oh, that's so good. I mean, I don't know if that's Michael C. Hall or just the character, but one way or the other.
Where does one end and the other start, right? Because like the one that blends the two for me is when Sophia tries to kiss him. And he's like he's like super awkward about it, and then he fist bumps her.
Oh my god.
and then the part that really made me stand up out of my chair was he's like, I gotta run an errand like right now, and he like goes to get into the truck and she says something like, it was good seeing you or something, and he goes, yeah, and that was so just both Michael C. Hall and Dexter in perfect balance. It's the most just the just like the awkward like, oh god, it was so fucking good.
I think that is kind of I love this show so much, and I love all the seasons. It's really I'm gonna be honest, even like when the show's at its worst from the original series or whatever, I still love it. Even though it's like, it's more of like, I love it even though I kind of acknowledge it's bad. Like, you know what I mean?
Even the weird like religious one where he kills the guy with the sword, like that one, I still love it.
I love that. I love that season, and I can tell you the point where that season falls apart. Don't get me started. But like, I love this character and I love this show. But when Clyde Phillips left, and I don't think it happens immediately because a lot of people don't realize this, in season 5 of that show, there was an interim showrunner that came in.
Yeah.
And that she was only there for one season and then she left, and then Scott Buck came in and did the last 3. And I think Scott Buck is where I was kind of like, I don't know about this.
Right.
But I still love those seasons, even though I think Scott Buck I kind of want to strangle him sometimes.
Yeah.
But like some point after Clyde Phillips left, they kind of like forgot about there's a part of this character that is like they try and do the awkward thing, where they make him really really awkward and like fake human kind of thing, and they don't do it quite as well. But when you see it come back into play, like when New Blood picks up, and you can start to see the mannerisms again, where he's obviously much better at it now. But every once in a while, you're like, "Oh, there's that super fucking awkward dude that I remember from the early days that I feel like I feel like I haven't seen since season 4." And you can feel it here too in Original Sin. They nail that part.
Patrick is nailing it for me, dude. I'm really like the only thing with Patrick that I'm kind of like, that's a little weird, is sometimes his voice, it almost sounds like it has like a southern drawl to it.
I think you're picking up on, because he is British or not British. He's Irish. So he has a bit of an Irish accent. I would say
interesting.
He has an Irish accent, so he is having to mimic an American accent. So you're probably picking up, and that's obviously something that Michael C. Hall didn't have to deal with. So you're picking up on that. But the fact that you
Right.
couldn't tell, I think, is pretty telling.
That's
But you're
great.
definitely picking up on some of that happening. Um,
Interesting. I did not know
like
that at all.
go watch like some of the behind the scenes stuff, and where he obviously just lets
Yeah, just
the
lets it
Irish
fall.
accent, and you're just like,
Yeah.
oh, they
Oh,
call
wow.
on set they call him Patty, which is so Irish.
Patty. Yeah, that's so
um,
great. That's so great.
so yeah, so he's doing a great job, but obviously
Yeah.
sometimes you can probably pick up on like he's like having to really try to
Yeah.
like hide the Irish thing.
Yeah.
Um,
So I'm sure we'll talk about him some more, but I want to talk about some of the other casting.
mhm.
First of all, Batista, whoever the fuck they cast for Batista,
James
is the
Martinez.
spitting fucking image of him. That when I saw him in the trailer, I was like, "What the actual fuck?" And then seeing him in the show, I'm like, "Dear God!" So real quick, it's Batista, Masuka, and Laura Moser that are all
Mhm.
dead ringers for the original actors and
I
actresses.
actually had to. I had to do a double take, and I was like,
Yeah.
did they just bring back the actress for Laura Moser from the original
Right?
series? Because she looks exact. But I was like, if that was the case, she would. I mean,
She'd be.
she would look like she was 20 years old because it's been a long time since
Yeah.
because she was only really featured in the first. I think maybe the first, maybe second season of
Hmm.
the original show. So
Yeah.
like it's been a while, but like she doesn't look like she's aged a day here. But no, they just found someone that looks
Exactly like
remarkably
her.
like her, and they did a really good job with like makeup and casting or
And hair.
wardrobe and stuff and hair, and like
Yeah.
she just looks just like her.
It's
Um,
fucking wild, dude.
and on top of that, I feel like she's a scene stealer. She's so
Yeah.
good.
She's
She's
so
so good.
good. Oh my
Um,
God.
and to your point about Batista and
Batista.
Masuka, I think Batista more so. It's weird because Masuka has hair.
Yeah, Masuka has hair, but he still looks and he sounds just like him.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the
He's
laugh
got the
that he
laugh.
has.
He's
Oh
got
my
the laugh,
God.
and let me just tell you, uh, the actor who plays Masuka, and I apologize, I'm forgetting his name. Right, is Alex?
I don't
I
know.
can't remember his last name. He is such he seems like such a cool dude, and he's like one of the most. He is if you follow him on Instagram, he's like doing all these like wonderful behind the scenes things and
Oh,
like getting
cool.
he likes to film like dance videos and stuff, and he's getting all the other castmates to like do it with him and stuff like
Oh, that's funny.
in my like on the Miami Metro set, he's like getting Christina Milian to do like little dance numbers with them for like TikToks and Instagrams and shit.
Yeah,
And it's so good. He just seems
that's so
like
great.
he's a ball of energy. He's fun. He does the laugh.
Yeah,
He's great. But
Batista.
Batista, I don't even think I really got to hear much of his performance until until we actually see him in the first episode. More so in the
Right.
second. Um, and I was like, he definitely has the look, but like, how does he do in the thing? And he's
I think he
great.
nails it. I
I
think he
think he
nails it.
nails it.
Especially the scene in the bar with Dexter where he's
Mm,
finding out about Renee and how him and his mother got killed.
yeah,
Um, I was like, dude, this is Batista. Like, holy
yeah.
shit. It's
Which I think
so.
is going to be really. I think he's a really important character because and not to go on another tangent here about Dexter Resurrection, which is coming later, but
They're gonna get into it, I bet. They've got a
Batista,
reckoning coming.
I would be shocked if
Yeah.
David Zayas is not one of the first casting announcements for
Yeah.
Dexter Resurrection as Batista. So
Yeah.
like the fact that James Martinez looks so much like Batista, it's going
Yeah.
to create this nice, seamless
Yeah.
kind of like through line, which I think is great.
Yeah. They have a
Um,
rivalry coming up for sure.
yeah. So yeah, I think he's a standout casting choice here in the show. And now that we've gotten to episode 3 and we've met LaGuerta, Christina
Yeah.
Milian,
She's good too.
I think she's fantastic. I think she embodies the character. I think
Yep.
she's doing a great job with the performance. I can see that like her interpretation of the character blends, I think, beautifully with the
Yeah.
original. Um, and she was kind of like the wild card for me. She was like the one I was like, I don't know.
Right.
I haven't seen a lot of her acting. She was a pop star before she was an actress. And I haven't seen a lot of her
Oh,
acting stuff,
interesting.
right?
Okay.
So, and I'm like, that doesn't mean anything. She could be great. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just did
Just
not
haven't
know.
seen her. Yeah.
Outside of Christian Slater, she was the only other person I had heard of
Yeah.
prior to things. So I was kind of like waiting to see what
Yeah.
happens. So I was like, I'm impressed so far. if
Yeah.
she's not good, she's going to be she's going to stick out. But she was great.
Right. So the only person that isn't selling it for me
I
so
think I know
far
who it's going to be.
is Deb.
Oh, that's not who I thought it was going to be at all.
Oh, who did you think it was going to be?
I thought you were going to say Patrick Dempsey, and
Oh, no.
I have
Oh,
started to
oh,
come.
I have a question about Patrick Dempsey.
Mhm.
So is this chief, the guy that Patrick Dempsey plays, is that the
No,
same guy? It is not the same
no,
guy that is rivals
you're
with LaGuerta in the main series.
you're thinking of Captain Matthews from the original series, and two different
Oh,
characters. So
I thought this
Patrick,
was Captain Matthews. Okay.
so when he was originally cast, because they do this a lot with casting on shows. They'll announce casting and characters and
Yeah.
whatever, but they'll use like if they don't want you to know who someone is playing, they'll use like a code name or whatever. And they
Okay.
announced he was playing Captain Spencer or Aaron Spencer, right? And I was like,
Yeah.
what if they're just like, what if that's really Captain Matthews and they're just using a code name because they don't want people to
Right.
realize? But I was like, why would they do that? Like that doesn't make any sense because like
Yeah.
they're not being that coy around anybody else, and Captain Matthews was never that important. You know what I mean? So like it would seem like a weird thing. And sure enough, his character's name is Spencer,
Captain Spencer.
Captain Spencer.
Interesting.
But what that does open the door for is because I've had this conversation with John a lot. We've been like, where the
Yeah.
fuck is Captain Matthews? Because we know we know he's close with Harry.
Because Captain Spencer gets in that big argument with LaGuerta when she first comes in, and thinking that it was Captain Matthews, I was like, "Oh,
I mean,
this
it
is
makes
how
sense. The
that all
dots,
started."
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so that's super weird that he's not Captain Matthews.
And I have some theories about that.
You think he's the bad guy? I've heard people
I
saying
mean,
he's the bad guy.
I've had that thought. I've had the thought
Yeah,
that he's the kidnapper, and
yeah.
I've also had thought that this just means that he is going to inevitably perish
Oh,
in the
yeah, for
season, and
sure.
that's going to pave the way for Matthews to kind of come in, and then
Well,
suddenly
so
he's the
is
new
Sarah
captain.
Michelle Gellar, right? She's got to die at some point.
I mean, what we know is, and let me say right now, Sarah Michelle Gellar doing fantastic. I love
Hmm.
her character, Tanya Martin. Her character in the show,
I'm
I
not
think is,
sold on it. I'm
oh
not
man,
like, I don't know.
I mean, I don't know what role she's ultimately going to play in the
Sure.
grand scheme of things yet,
Yeah.
but when she's on screen, I'm loving it.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens. And I've also, again, you want to talk about rumors and theories and speculation.
Hmm.
I could go. I have about 4 acting theories right now about who that kidnapper is, and
Okay.
she's one of them.
Oh, interesting.
Because what we do know is
Yeah, I get bad guy vibes from her.
Patrick Dempsey and Sarah Michelle Gellar are both guest stars, right? So
You're right.
if this show is picked up for a second season, which I imagine it probably will be, uh, they're probably not going to be returning. So
Yeah.
they're either going to die or they're going to be the bad guy and they're going to die. So I mean,
Right.
that's just like I'm not basing that off of like
Sure.
any like
It's just
secret
basic
knowledge or anything.
Dexter.
It's just me kind of like trying to piece
Yeah.
things together. And let me tell you, Dexter is Dexter's best when you're trying to figure out right along with Dexter, like who the fuck is doing all this stuff, right?
Right.
Like that's why I think that was kind of the secret sauce from like those first 4 seasons. That
Yeah.
kind of they tried to replicate it in like season 6 and season 8, and it's just
Yeah.
it does they don't do it as well. But
Yeah.
Clyde Phillips has always been pretty good at it.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's happening here.
Okay.
I'm not entirely sold on any of these characters being the villain, but I'm like something's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And that's cool.
Okay. Very good.
But Deb, you want to talk about Deb?
Yes, so
And
I want to talk about Deb. She I like the actress a lot. I think I have a huge crush on her. I think
oh
she's
yeah, she's
drop dead gorgeous, my
she is
God.
cute. Yeah.
But I just I've tried so hard to see her as Deb, and she looks like Deb. I don't think there's anything wrong with the physical
It's her
appearance.
behavior.
It's her behavior is just not selling Deb to me like at all. Like I've even tried to like open my mind to like, well, she's a younger Deb, so she's gonna like behave differently. And even then, when I try so hard, I just
Yeah.
still I'm like, she just seems like some other sister. She doesn't seem like Deb. I don't know.
So, a couple things about that. One, I I get what you're coming from. I do
Hmm.
think, even though I don't necessarily feel the same way, I get it,
Sure.
and I do feel like maybe by the end of the season, it'll make more sense.
Interesting.
Two, I
Okay.
think part of it has to do with we did see younger Deb a little bit in the original series in the first
Mm.
season in flashbacks, and
Yeah.
she doesn't act anything like this.
Right.
But uh, I think a lot of people maybe don't remember that the Deb that we see in those flashbacks is the Deb that was like it's when Dexter was even pre original sin. It was when Dexter was like 16 or 17 years old,
Super
right?
young. Yeah.
So his sister at this point, Deb, was like 15, 14 or 15. So
Yeah.
she was not quite she wasn't even in high school yet. She was kind of
Right.
nerdy and just,
Yeah.
shy.
Yeah.
So we have that vision of Deb, and then obviously we have adult Deb as
Right.
Jennifer Carpenter, right? So we don't unless I'm forgetting one, I don't think we ever saw a flashback of like Deb during this part of his life. Except there's the scene with there was a flat when they did the flashback to Nurse Mary, and
Right.
it was Jennifer Carpenter
Yeah.
wearing goofy glasses and a bad wig.
Right.
Or whatever. Same thing with
Right.
my
Right.
Hall. Um, so, but we heard a lot about Deb always being like frustrated with Dexter and Harry's relationship, but we never really got to
Yeah.
see much of it at this point in her
That
life.
is cool to see in this show.
Yeah, so what we're getting is, high school senior or high school junior, or whatever, Deb,
Yeah.
who's you know teenager who's rebelling on a normal level, just like doing what normal teenager shit, on top of being super frustrated with what's going on between her dad and Dexter and rebelling against that. And those two
Right.
things, I think, are like creating this like this like
Yeah.
cesspool of just toxicity
Teen
and
angst. Yeah.
teen angst, and you know what I mean. So, and I don't think a lot of people were prepared for that, and I get it.
Yeah.
This is definitely the first time we're really seeing that. But I have to have faith that by the end of the season, or maybe the series, because at this point I don't know if they're going to keep going with Original Sin or if they're just going to make this a one-off. I assume they're going to renew it. By the time we get through this, I feel like that connective tissue will be there,
Yeah.
but right now it doesn't exist. So she's just kind of floating out there on her own without any of
Right.
that connective tissue, right? So
Yeah.
that's my theory. I don't know if it's accurate, but that's my theory. I do like her a lot. I think Molly Brown is great.
Yeah.
I just hope she kind of like connects the dots a
Finds.
little bit.
Yeah. Because I feel like I think the difference for me is I feel like Patrick. I'm forgetting his last name.
Gibson.
Gibson.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Patrick has like studied like the micro like he like I could picture Patrick having watched the show like 3 times over in its entirety with how well he mimics Michael C. Hall.
Yeah.
Molly, I'm kind of like I'm like, did you watch the show? I'm like, did I'm like, I just don't see it. She's got like the swearing is okay.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
but
that's the connective tissue they're relying on at this point, and
yeah, I'm like, that's like the
they shouldn't be
only
relying.
thing. Yeah.
I will say
Speaking of,
this: I
go
I
ahead.
told you I'm not going to talk about episode 4, but there is a scene in episode 4. I'm not saying it's going to move the needle one way or the other,
Sure.
but she has a bit of an emotional scene in episode 4
Okay. That's cool.
where maybe it kind of explains her behavior a little bit.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I do think
so
too that like the older Deb we see is the Deb after Harry dies.
right,
And
that
so
could
the
be a
Deb,
whole different that could be a
yeah,
whole different, like, someone's personality could do a dramatic left turn. You know what I mean? When
yeah,
something like that happens to him. So
right. So,
and
yeah, that could be
obviously this season is building to something,
right.
and I'm hoping that whatever that something is, it maybe kind of sets the stage a little bit better for like where Dexter and Deb are when we first meet them in the original series.
Do you think we get Original Sin season 2?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I because I follow the cast a lot and I hear them talk about stuff a lot, and none of
Yeah.
them seem to be like, when they wrapped filming or whatever, none of their posts wrapped filming seem to be like, well, it was fun. We
Right.
might never see each other again. It was. I
Right.
feel like they're all just kind of like waiting for the renewal, and
Right.
And they've already said that Dexter Resurrection is going to be more than one season.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so they're obviously going all in on Dexter.
Yeah.
And as long as Clyde Phillips is there and Scott Reynolds is there and Michael C. Hall is giving his blessing, like,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. As long as they know they should be working towards an ending. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Like,
As long as they have something in mind.
as long
Yeah.
as it's building towards an ending, if you have a story for season 2 of Original Sin, go for it.
Yeah.
I think right now this the first season is kind of serving as it's definitely supposed to it almost feels like a marketing tool to like tell people that like New Blood wasn't really the ending, right? The opening scene of episode 1 of Original Sin is Dexter has survived the gunshot wound and he's being rushed to a hospital.
Okay, yeah, so we got to go into talking about our individual episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll just kind of talk about like our key favorite moments from each one.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
that is what I want to talk about, because the first thing we see in this show is Michael C. Hall. You know, he got shot by his son, and then they get him into the car, and then they get him to the hospital, and he is being resuscitated.
Yes.
What are your like, do you have any like major thoughts on this, or is this kind of like, yeah, it's kind of what we expected?
This is not, I don't want to toot my own horn here.
Sure.
But I did write an article for Dexter Daily a while ago because I was like thinking about this, right? Because I announced Resurrection at the panel at the Comic-Con panel for Original Sin. And they were talking and Michael C. Hall was like clearly coming back and he
Yeah.
was being very dodgy about like the details or whatever. And I was like and I had this thought, I was like, what if Original Sin is like his life flashing before his eyes, and that's like the
Right.
narrative framing for the whole thing.
Oh,
And sure
damn.
enough, that's what they did.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, I thought they were going to make that reveal at the end of the season, not the very beginning.
Ooh,
I thought the
okay.
whole thing was going to build to camera pulling back from black, and it's all of a sudden it's coming out, and there's Michael C. Hall like in an like either in a hospital bed or like sometime later like in an interrogation room, and there's Batista sitting across from him, and he's like,
Yeah.
and that's what happened. You know, and like he's like telling
Right.
somebody his life story. Like, I thought that's kind of what was going to happen. So I was
Right.
really surprised to see them do it at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I also,
Do
but
you
I
feel
also
like
get
that kills some of the does that kill some of the not expectation, but like the
uh
mystery or the thrill to see at the beginning that he survived?
I don't I mean, they're not being coy about it.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they've already said as much. He's not I think this scene in this episode only exists because they want to get people who were upset about New Blood back
Yes,
on the hook.
that's a good point. They have to let people know right away that we're gonna fix it. Like if you were
And I
upset with it, we're fixing
yeah,
it.
and I can see I can and I don't know if this is what happened, but I could definitely see them having like here's the whole episode, and they're like, well, what if we film like just a little bit more and just tack it on at the beginning? Like that's
Row for
almost
sure.
and that's okay. I
Because
get
how
it. Like
how else would you have like how else would they be able to explain Michael C. Hall's like
yeah,
inner monologue narration?
I think that was actually even if that's a decision that happened super late in the game, I think it was integral to making Michael C. Hall's narration of the series make sense.
Yeah.
And that was the thing I was the most worried about when they announced that he was going
Oh,
to be doing the narration. Not because I think obviously he's great. I want to
right.
hear more Michael C. Hall's narrate, but I was also like, are they
How
just
would they
not going to?
explain it?
I was like, how does that make any sense?
Yeah.
I was like, also, like, there's part of me that's like, if you're going to let Patrick Gibson be the character, let Patrick Gibson be the character. Like, let him do his inner monologue.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad they went with Michael C. Hall instead of Patrick for the inner monologue.
If the show
I
continues, I wouldn't be surprised if it switches at some point, and we're actually just
Interesting.
because right now the whole thing, this whole season, is in the service of
Yeah, Resurrection.
resurrection,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Interesting.
But if they're going to do a second season or a third season or whatever, like at some point, it's probably not going to make a ton of sense if the narrative framing of his life flashing before his eyes is no longer important.
Mhm.
How important is it that Michael C. Hall is doing the narration? I don't know. I mean, if
Yeah.
they keep doing it, great, whatever. It makes sense. I like it, and it's made for some. It's changed the dynamic just enough between this and the original series that it's really interesting. Like instead of his inner thoughts, it's like he's narrating parts of his past, and like
Mhm.
it's a subtle shift, but it makes the whole thing feel kind of fresh, and
Right.
I really like that, and I love a lot of the commentary he's doing. I mean, it would have worked. I mean, I guess a lot of the way it's written wouldn't have worked if it was Patrick Gibson saying that same shit in his head, because it would have sounded like a third person instead of coming from first person.
Right.
It's weird, man. It's weird.
Yeah.
I like it. I fucking
Yeah.
like it though. It's
Yeah, I
cool.
love it. I'm so glad. I hope I feel like I'm a little bit different where I hope if we do get a season 2 or 3, I hope it stays Michael C. Hall for
I
the
think it
narration.
probably will, but it really just comes down to is Michael. I mean, you
Yeah,
gotta
does
let
he
the man.
want to do narration for
You
the
gotta let the man go at some point. If he has agreed to do a couple more seasons to like give the
Yeah,
character an ending, that's fantastic. But you gotta
sure.
let the man walk into the sunset at some point. Like
I know. Yeah.
he has done so much for this character, and I think he does want what's best for the character. But God, the man thought he was done with New Blood, and
Oh,
now he's
right.
coming back.
I know.
Um,
That's so funny.
but like again, I think he'll always come back and he'll always give it his all. But like, come on,
Hmm.
let the
Yeah.
man do something
Let him
else.
go. Let him go.
uh,
Do you have any other favorite moments from the first episode? I have this quote here,
mhm.
um, where we were just kind of talking about it a little bit ago, where the nurse comes in. It's after Harry has his like heart
Mhm.
attack or whatever, and the nurse is telling him everything he needs to do, and she's like, "And quit fucking smoking. Excuse my French." And Deb
Your
says,
French is
"Your French
excellent.
is excellent."
That
That made
that
me
right
laugh out loud.
that right there was
That's Deb.
we've had conversations about Deb obviously
Yeah.
already, but like that was the moment where I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm on board. I'm on board for Deb. I think they still got some work to do to like connect the dots, but like
Sure.
that was Deb, and I
Yeah.
loved it.
Your French is excellent.
That was
It's
my
so
favorite line
good.
of the whole episode.
And she says it like so quick. It's like so, and she does it so like just like blank face, like
Just so much respect for someone willing to like drop an F bomb. You know what I mean? Like
right. Yeah.
good
Oh my
stuff. Good
God.
stuff.
So good. First episode, any favorite moments?
Um, yeah. I mean, I think the frat party was a really cool scene.
That was great.
Um, we kind of get to know Sophia a little bit, and we
Yeah.
can already kind of see that like the dynamics between her and Deb. I think that's gonna be really fun to watch now that we know that she's crushing on Dexter really hard.
Right.
But like Dexter kind of going into protective brother mode.
That was
Um,
great.
that's a really important thing. I mean, the reason Dexter as a character works is because he is
There's
human
a
to some
part of
extent.
him that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a part of him that wants to protect his sister, and I think that was really important.
Yep.
Um, and
It was
man,
good
watching
they
him
established that in the first episode too.
and like the kind of like the interaction he has with Deb outside after they've been kicked out of the party or whatever,
Yeah.
and she's like, "What the
Hold my
fuck,
hair
Dex?" And he
back.
was like,
Oh,
"Yeah," and he's like, "But yeah," leading up to that, but where he's
yeah.
like, "Well," she was all pissed, and he's like, "I came into the room and his pants were down,"
Right.
and and then you can just immediately see like, "Oh shit."
Yeah. That was a very
You,
Dexter and Deb moment.
very good moment, and you could see instantly she was like, she forgives him,
Right.
and then the whole like hold my fucking hair back was so good.
It's so great.
And then like and then this is like a small thing when they come home and they're trying to like sneak into the house and Dexter's like
Yes.
glass of water, get in bed, go to sleep.
Yes.
And it was just kind of like that was like such a human.
Yep.
He likes to talk about how he's not human, but like you
Yep.
see those things, and it
Yep.
reminds us that like the whole point of the show, in my opinion, the whole point of this
Hmm.
character is that he doesn't think he's human,
Right.
but there's some of it's in there, and we can see it, and
Well,
that's
I
why we
hope
like him.
I hope that we see more because so far Christian Slater has been like a very nurturing father to him, but kind of, but
Mhm.
the Harry that we see in the main series is always reminding Dexter that he is different, reminding him that he is other than, reminding him that he is not very human. And
I
so
think we start to see that in the third episode when
yeah,
he tells Harry about the earrings, and
yeah.
you see he like pins
He's
them
like,
up against
that's
the wall, and he's
fucked
like,
up.
"What the
Yeah,
fuck is wrong with you?" Like we
right.
finally kind of start to see that, and you see, I think, a little bit more of that come out in the fourth episode.
Okay.
I think we're getting there. I can tell you right now, the entire time now I'm watching Harry um evolve kind of as a character. And I hate to say it like this. I don't This is going to sound dark. But
That's okay.
I'm sitting here like, holy shit, I kind of see why he eventually kills himself, because
Yeah.
he is
Oh, is that how
since
he dies? I forgot that's how
Oh,
he
do you not
died.
remember this? Oh,
Did
yeah,
he
yeah,
kill
yeah.
himself?
In the second season, Dexter finds out that after he at some point Harry walks in on him in a kill room and sees what he's done.
I do
And then
not remember
oh, yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's when Dexter has Dokes trapped in the cabin at the very end, and then Dokes is like,
Okay.
and then he like drugs Dokes, and Dokes is like, you really are like your dad. You're fucked up. I forgot what he says or something. He
Yeah.
starts, and then he ends up going to Captain Matthews, and Matthews ends up telling him that he actually committed suicide. He overdosed on his heart medication. Um,
Oh.
and Dexter ends up realizing that he's the reason that his dad
Yeah.
killed himself. So that, like, obviously is a monumental moment for him. So like this entire season, I'm kind of like having that in the back of my head, and I'm like,
Right.
he's like, first he's in denial. He's in
Yeah.
complete denial because like he's trained him, but he
Yeah.
thinks that letting him kill one time is going to be good. Like that's
Right.
it, we're good.
Yep.
And then he doesn't think he's going to take trophies. And then he finds out that he's taking trophies, and he's like,
Yeah.
fuck. He's like,
Yep.
the whole point of this thing is to make you not like these
Different.
people, but you're
Yeah.
doing the same shit. So he's starting to feel more and more like a failure.
Right.
And that's on top of what we learned in the first episode, which is brand new information, which is like kind of justifying the
That
whole
he
existence of
lost
the
a
prequel,
son.
is that he had already lost a son, which is why he was so
Yeah.
willing. He was like, I'm not going to lose another son,
Right.
so I'm going to I'm going to like teach Dexter how to live with this. Um,
Right.
like it reframes the entire character. I think it was a really smart way to kind of just shift your perspective and make and enrich. Honestly, I think it enriches the character a lot,
Yeah.
because so much of what we learn about Harry in the original series is told through like police reports and Dexter's vague memory of him, Deb's
Yeah.
recollection of him, and now I feel like they're actual like human beings, like him and Laura,
Yeah.
human beings who
Oh, yeah.
the circumstances led them to make a decision that was fucked up, and but now they don't feel like gross people. They just feel like people
Yeah.
making choices.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of justified. I think that lends itself to like that's why you make a prequel. We know
Right.
we know what happens,
Yeah.
but
And
tell us
it's just
more.
getting
Like
to that point. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's cool.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say about episode 1 is when he's killing the nurse.
Mm-hmm.
She's like screaming, and he holds the knife up to her, and he says, "Scream again and lose a tongue."
Mm-hmm.
And it gave Michael C. Hall energy like so hard, or just
Did
I
you
guess just
happen
like Dexter
to?
in general.
Yeah, did you happen to rewatch the scene from the? Because this is like the
No, I
one.
should. I
This is the
should.
one instance where like the kill we saw this kill in the original
Right.
series,
Yeah, we did.
and it's a little different here. It's a
Okay.
little bit different, but not by much. But
Okay.
like they tweak little things,
Yeah.
and you could chalk that up to in the first series he was just recalling it or whatever, and maybe it wasn't super accurate, and now this is just a different him recalling the memory a different time, and it's different a little bit, whatever.
Sure.
But like, yeah, he does the scream and lose a tongue. He does that in the original one.
Oh,
The line they
interesting.
added here that I actually really liked was, well, they added two things. One, she says, "I took their pain away," and he says, "They didn't ask you to do that." And I was
Yeah.
like,
That was so
that
good.
is not only is that badass, that is
Hmm.
true. They did
Yeah.
not ask you to do that, so
Right.
fuck you.
Yeah.
And then two, when he puts his hand on her chest and you can hear
The
you can
heartbeat,
the heartbeat. I
and then you get
so
the feet
yeah,
in the
so
stadium.
uh my wife and I were watching that, and we have a subwoofer, and
Oh.
we didn't realize it was coming, and all of a sudden, like the room is shaking because you can just.
Oh my God.
And I was
Yeah.
like, "That's the coolest fucking shit." I was like, I know not everybody's gonna necessarily have the setup to like really feel that. You can definitely hear it, but like
Yeah.
if you have a subwoofer hooked up,
Oh my
the whole
God.
room is shaking with his heartbeat, and I was like, "That's so cool. That was
I'm
such a
gonna
cool
have to
touch."
hook up my subwoofer. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
do it. It's
That's
so
so
cool.
great.
Um,
That's awesome.
yeah, I think this first episode was really strong. Honestly, at
Yeah.
this point, my least favorite episode of the series so far.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think it's just because like it had so much ground to cover in the first
Yes.
episode.
Are you surprised? Are you surprised we didn't get like young Dexter? Like when he first starts killing animals and stuff? Like, do you think we'll get a flashback or something, I would imagine?
You should watch episode 4.
Okay, okay, great. Okay,
Sorry.
that's awesome. Well,
Yeah, I know I said I wasn't going to spoil anything, but you should
no,
watch
that's
episode
fine.
4.
That's totally fine. That's totally fine. Okay, so let's move on to episode 2. Do you have favorite moments from episode 2? Like a couple of them?
Yes. I mean, I think the obvious one is him
Put me
coming
to
to his
work,
first
boss.
crime scene. Oh yeah, put me
Oh
to work,
yeah,
boss. Great
I love
moment.
that line so much.
Um,
But yeah,
and this is
first crime
also
scene.
yeah, first crime scene. The walking up to the body for the first time, getting the big smile, and then hearing Michael C. Hall's voiceover, and then seeing like the bow wrapped around the body, like, and he's describing it as
Yes.
like waking up on Christmas morning, and I was
Yeah,
like,
he said, well, what was the actual line? He says,
and I'd been a good boy, like,
yeah, he's
yeah,
like, and I've been a good, yeah, my first crime scene, it felt like Christmas morning, and I had been a good boy. It's like,
so
fuck.
good, so good, so Dexter, and like it was the first glimpse I think of what we see, and I think they've done it a few more times at this point, and I hope they do it more, where they start to like use like kind of projections from like his
Yes,
mind into like the
right.
world, because we didn't see a ton of that in the original series, but like they did a little bit of it in New Blood.
Yeah.
They could do some of it here, and I think
Hmm.
they should keep going with it.
Yeah.
Because,
I like that a
so
lot.
I love that whole scene, and like him getting really excited. He's like, "I have a theory," and he's like describing how the guy died, and like everyone's just like, "Oh, great, great theory! Hey guys, come listen to this," and they're just like
Right.
hazing him.
Oh, and
So good,
it was so
so
funny
good.
too, because I don't know, when you were watching it for the first time and he was like spinning his theory and all this, were you like, oh, is he about to be like this prodigy and they're just gonna be like, oh
I
my
thought that.
God. Yeah, I thought that too. I thought they were gonna be like, oh,
Super
holy
impressed.
shit, like you saw something we didn't see. And then they were all like, no, we all know that, idiot. Like,
And I think that right there is an example of why I trust this. I trust
yeah,
these writers, because I think that was a very Clyde Phillips, Scott Reynolds kind of thing that I don't
yes.
think they ever would have got in the last few seasons of the original series. But
Yeah,
like, because the obvious choice would be like him to like impress everybody all of a sudden because he knows he
right,
can read the scene like an expert. But
right,
like Clyde's like, no, he comes in, he thinks he's a fucking expert, and then they make him feel like an idiot.
right.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
And I like that the other cop, I forget who said it, but it was one of the other cops that was like, yeah, we know that because of the way the
Yeah.
powder is like on his forehead or whatever, like
Yeah.
the gunpowder or
We
whatever.
never would have figured that out. Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's so good. And then kind of another part of that scene I really liked was when he's like gets all excited because Tanya's telling him how to like she's like, I got a job for you. And he's like, oh, I'm ready. I'm ready,
Yeah.
boss. And she's like, I
Sends
need you
him
to
the
go across the
coffee.
street and give me some coffee in like the coffee run. And it's like that's so like it's like everybody like if you've ever been an intern somewhere or you've ever
Yep.
been like the lowest rung in the totem pole, like you know this, you see this, you've been
Yeah.
there, and like that's seeing someone like him forced into that situation is
Yeah.
hilarious, and I loved it.
It's so
Um,
good.
and then that
What?
also like spreads later when they're in the restaurant and they continue to haze him with the
Yes.
sandwich, like they take all the meat out of his sandwich or whatever.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah. I liked the diner or the whatever
The
restaurant
restaurant scene.
scene.
Yeah.
Dude, I think you are wrong about the Brian Moser thing.
Oh.
I think this is Brian Moser. And after I said that, I heard like a bunch of other people talking about it. And
I'm coming around on it.
I think it's Brian Moser.
Okay, remember I said there were about I had like 4 theories right now as to who the kidnapper is that they keep
Yeah.
teasing. And I was
You
like,
think it could be Ice Truck?
one of those people is I think it could be Brian. And
Yeah.
the reason I say that is because a couple things. I mean,
He's chopping body parts off and sending them.
he's chopping body parts off and sending them to people.
Yeah.
Um, he's clearly a psychopath because he's doing this to a child.
Right.
He and Dexter obviously is very bothered by this,
Right.
and this, on top of that, he's not making any demands. He's not
Right.
communicating to anybody. So everyone's just like, "What the fuck is he doing?" And it's like, "Well, he's not. He's doing this for someone else, not for y'all." And
Mm.
then on top of that, when we meet Brian in the first series, in the original series, when we finally know what's going on, he knows like everything about Dexter. Like
Right.
he knows he's a killer. He knows what his MO is. He knows what makes him tick.
Yeah.
So we don't know how he figured all that shit out. And I'm
Yeah.
starting to think this is the beginning of him trying to figure
Yes.
that shit out. My only question is, if that does prove to be the case, then
Then who's our villain for the
who's
season?
our actual villain for the season? Because
Right.
obviously they never actually cross paths.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I'm starting to really come around on the Brian Moser thing.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
I mean, it's a cool theory, and I've talked to other people about it who are also like, I think that's really cool. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
people seem to be on board for this too. Like, they're not
Mhm.
like that's not only are they like that's Brian Moser, but like that's Brian Moser, and that's fucking cool. So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, they're doing something right. So
Yeah.
it's cool. And if it's not him, then they've done a really good job of like leading us astray and
Just
and
giving
whatever.
us a tease or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's neat. So I hope one way or the other, I hope they do something cool with this character, this kidnapper villain.
Yeah.
Also, to kind of back to the restaurant thing real quick, when they were hazing
Yeah.
him, and I got this vibe at the crime scene too. What I really liked about it was that like even though they're hazing the shit out of him, like it always feels playful. It always
Yeah.
feels like they're not doing
They're
it
a
out
family.
they're doing it because they're accepting him, and he can feel that, and and it's not malicious, and
Yep.
I think that's really sweet. I think that's really
Yeah.
cool, and I think you can see he's starting to feel accepted, and that's probably why he ends up staying there for 20 plus
Right.
years. You know what I mean? Like, it's cool. And I think because I had recently rewatched the series, and I think all the way back to season 8 when we thought it was the end, and he like gives his notice to Batista that he's leaving Miami Metro, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's a great moment. And now it feels even more impactful because I'm seeing like how this all started, and like that's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's so good. My last note about episode 2 is Dex figuring out the donuts. Because at first he brings the veggie plate.
He brings the veggie plate.
He's got like the idea. He's like, I need to be the guy
he was that close.
Like brings something, and so he's bringing the veggie plate, and then he meets the lady in the records, which I thought was funny, who's also a spitting image of that actress.
Yep.
I forget what her name is, but Camilla, yeah, she's very. They did great casting with her. And she
throws them in the. She takes the veggies and throws them in the trash.
But then he brings the donuts, and it was just so like I can picture in my mind how Dexter is like swaying through the office with the donuts, like older Dexter, like Michael C. Hall. And I'm watching Patrick do it, and I'm like, dude, that's fucking Dexter, and he's got the donuts and like. Just like bringing them to everybody, I'm like, this is so good.
Such a clever touch. I loved that scene. Also, last highlight of episode 2 for me was actually the final scene, where he's like dreaming about going after Tony Ferrer. And he's laying in bed, whatever, and they're playing Alice in Chains, and he's like projecting the thing on the ceiling.
Was that actually on a projector, or was that just in his head?
I think it was just in his head. Yeah, I mean that's kind of like the bow thing, where it's just like that's what he's imagining, so it's projected onto the screen, or onto the ceiling above him, and he's like it's playing Alice in Chains, and I was like, I fucking love this song, and the camera's going over, and you see Harry in his room, you see Deb in bed on the phone, and then it comes over, and he's just like, "Hello, darkness, my old friend," and I was like,
that was so good.
So fucking good.
It's so good. Okay, so I know you got to go soon. Let's just give our quick thoughts on episode 3, because there's more in this one than any of the other ones.
And I think this is maybe the best episode of the season so far. I think it's
really
great.
Okay. Cool.
I mean, I loved episode 2, but I think this is a pretty great episode, personally.
Yeah. I think this is fantastic because we see Dexter start to look for like Tony Ferrer, and he's like going into his house, and I love this scene where like he's obviously like the parrot thing. That's like a very Dexter thing where he hears like an animal in another room or
Yeah.
something. But I love when he goes to the fridge and he like opens up the fridge.
Yeah.
He like grabs the meat and just like eats it, and then he hears the bird and he like stops for a second, and then he continues eating the
Yeah.
meat. I'm like,
I'm actually really glad you brought that up because I was talking to somebody else about this, and they were like, "I really like this episode, but there's always the but, right?" And they were like,
yeah,
"This is the one time where I was like, I feel like they're moving a little too fast because he went from killing Nurse Mary, and it was kind of it was
yeah.
kind of a mess, and he didn't know what he was doing. And now in this episode when he does the killing, he's like super confident and he's doing all this stuff, and it's just
It
kind of
was a bit of a jump.
it's an escalation that maybe happened
Hmm.
faster than we were hoping it would."
Yeah,
And I agree with that. But I think this episode was designed to kind of like drive home the point that like to like really demonstrate that like he under pressure,
yeah,
he is in his element.
right.
He doesn't flinch. He
Yep,
doesn't like he when he hears that parrot and it's like, "Honey, I'm home," and he thinks it's a person,
yeah,
he doesn't even he's like, "Huh?" Like
right,
he doesn't panic. He doesn't
right,
freak out. He just like continues eating the fucking meat out of the fridge.
right. Yeah,
Um and and then obviously he does the whole thing, we'll talk about it, where he sets up the kill room in the fucking arena, right? Which is like
yeah,
that's a bit of a stretch, like it's a jump. It's a
yeah.
huge jump.
I don't know how I
Um
felt about that.
but like and then he does the thing in the alleyway where he gets him to shoot at his head or whatever, and it's
Yep,
just like he's in his he finally feels like he's free to do what he feels like Harry gave him the green light, and he's like, "I
right,
am going all in." And
right.
I do agree that I think maybe it moves a little fast, but at the same time, people want to see Dexter be Dexter.
Sure.
And I think that they were like, I know we're moving a little quick here, but I know we're getting to the
Well,
stuff that you guys want to see.
I like how it's kind of a halfway point. I mean, like we don't need to talk about the kill room right this second, but I do love how he like wraps him in strips of plastic, and
Yeah.
later on he figures out to like cocoon them
Yeah.
in plastic so that the blood doesn't go everywhere. But he's got like plastic all over the floor, and he just cuts him across the throat, and blood goes everywhere. And so I like how we're seeing like a middle ground of Dexter is naturally a very intuitive and like smart person, and performs well under pressure. But there's like some little things where he's
Yeah.
just like he's
He's
not
not
quite.
super fine tuned yet. Like he's
Yeah, he's
close.
not. Yeah, he's not super
He's
fine
getting there.
tuned. Yeah. And yeah, I love seeing him because he doesn't have his serum yet. He doesn't
No.
have like his injectable whatever it
I
was.
think we're getting to like kind of like what leads him to do that.
We've
Um
got to be right. Like,
well, again, this is like one of those
okay,
I'm not saying this happens in episode 4, but like
sure,
they lay more crumbs for like, okay, we're definitely getting to the point where he's realizing, okay, he needs to figure a cleaner way to do this.
right, yeah,
um
okay, that's
so
cool.
I definitely think this is we're slowly starting to see the decisions he made early on where he realized, okay, well that technically worked, but like maybe there's a better way to do this.
Right,
Right down to like the way he just gets rid of bodies. I'm sure right
yeah.
now he's just feeding them to alligators in the Everglades. Like I'm sure at some point that's going to come back to bite him in the ass.
Yeah, cause he just throws the earrings in the pond, and I'm like that. I don't know if that was a good idea. And then the guy's hand floats to the top with the ring on it.
Yeah, I think that's going to come. I haven't seen anything yet, but like I have a
Sure.
feeling that's going to come back. I don't know how
Yeah.
much you want me to like say about this kind of stuff, but like I already know every episode title for this season.
Oh. Oh, see, I don't. Okay.
And this is not like secret knowledge or anything. It's on
Sure.
IMDb.
Right.
But like there's an episode. Do you mind if I tell you what the episode's called?
You could tell me. Go ahead.
There's an episode called "The Big Bad Body Problem."
Oh.
So clearly, at some point,
Yeah.
he's gonna realize I got to figure out a better way to do this. I don't know what
Interesting. Yeah.
form that
I
takes.
I assumed there would come a point where his alligator solution was not working,
Yeah,
but I mostly thought it would be because of the jewelry. And
yeah,
so I was even thinking, like, why doesn't like later Dexter use alligators? Because
Something's
that,
gonna happen.
yeah, I'm so
But
curious
I
to
also
see
don't
how it
think
goes wrong.
but I also don't think we're gonna see him get his boat, at this point in his life, right?
Right, sure, yeah,
He
it's
can't
gonna be a
afford a boat.
ways. Right, yeah,
Um,
he can't get a boat yet.
so like I think at some point he's gonna shift away from the alligator thing, but like what's the interim between the alligators and the boat?
I was kind of
I'm not entirely
surprised.
sure.
I was kind of surprised that Harry didn't have a boat and then gave that boat to Dexter.
I mean, it could still happen. It could
I had
still
always
happen.
assumed that's where he got his boat, but
And that definitely could still happen. They just haven't said
yeah,
anything yet about him owning a boat. It's kind of like one of
yeah,
those things where it's like everybody lives in on the coast of Florida. Most people
have
in
some
some
kind of boat.
most families probably have a boat,
Yeah,
somewhere. So like
yeah,
maybe that's they could still introduce that later on. It would still make perfect sense, but we'll
yeah.
see what happens.
I loved that we got a limited two. They built a limited two storefront for when Deb and Dexter were going and
Oh,
getting the earrings for
yeah,
Sophia. I'm like,
yeah.
that's so funny. I literally have not seen a limited two since the 90s, so that's really
I don't even
funny.
remember that. That's crazy.
Oh, it's
Um,
like do you know what Claire's is now?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And that's
it
that's
was
the
like
vibe I was
that.
getting from the yeah.
Yeah, it was just called
I
limited
like
two.
that
I thought,
scene too, where
yeah,
she's like, "What about these ones?" She's like, "What is she fucking two?" Or
right, yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah, he just has no idea. Um, I liked yeah, this is funny. So speaking of Sophia, I wrote poor Harry, blow after blow for this guy. He thinks that Dexter, it's like after the dinner, and he thinks that Dexter is like into Sophia.
that's what
And
I'm talking about. The denial. He thinks
yeah,
every single thing he thinks is him being normal and human is actually the
right.
complete opposite.
Right. And Dexter is just like, "No, no, I'm not interested in her. She's just wearing the earrings that I stole off my dead body." And
Yeah,
Harry's like, "What the fuck?" Like, oh god, it's so good.
yeah.
Harry just keeps getting beat down turn after turn. He's trying so hard. He's trying so hard, and he just keeps getting just
You can tell
demolished.
he wants to be supportive. He wants to be a good dad, but he also wants his son to be normal.
Right.
And I mean, it's obviously not going to happen. It's
Right.
hard to at some levels it's hard to watch, but it's also like interesting. It's
Yeah.
really interesting. And I think they're
Yeah.
doing a really good job of like calling that out.
Yeah, for
Period. Every
sure.
time you think things are fine, they find a way
Mhm.
to remind Harry that like no, things are in fact not fine. Your
Right.
son is definitely a serial killer.
Right, yeah,
Um,
there's something going on here. Did you have any idea what High Lie was before this episode?
no, but I
Yeah,
looked
me
it up.
neither.
I
Yeah.
googled it, and I was
Oh,
like,
did you?
It's a thing that apparently is super popular in certain parts of Florida.
Oh,
And if it's
wow.
outside of Florida, it is like it's in I guess in certain parts of Europe, it's really popular. But in the states, it's like mostly Florida.
That's
Um,
funny.
and I don't even know if that's even much of a thing anymore, or if that was kind of a thing in the '90s. I'm not entirely sure, but like, yeah, I had never heard of it. Cool, it looks fucking cool, and it was a really cool like they're really
Yeah,
taking advantage of like being back in Miami,
right.
and that was just it was cool that I felt like I needed to look something up, and I found it, and I was like, that's weird, and
Yeah,
that feels very Miami to me.
right. I loved the scene during that highlight scene when Dexter like goes to meet Tony for the first
Hmm.
time, and we see Dexter in the main series where he's this smooth talker, like he's researched like the older Dexter would have researched highlight enough to know how to
To be
talk
able to
about
answer
it.
questions, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and to just be able to like, just be like a smooth talker about it. But this Dexter is like, I know that the ball is made of rubber and goat skin. Like,
Yeah.
I can just mention that randomly.
And Tony's
And
like, okay,
yeah,
sure.
he's like, what the fuck? Okay.
And then when he asks him, Tony eventually like realizes something's up, and he's like, "How do you keep score in this game?" And Dexter's like, "Fuck, I have
Fuck.
no idea."
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so what did you think of the scene where Dexter finally tells Harry like what he's up
Mm.
to? Where he's like, "This is the guy I'm going after. I have the proof."
I
Like, do you have
think
any?
this is the appeal of having
Yes.
a prequel where Harry is still alive.
Yes.
I think Harry is just as important as Dexter in the series, and I think that's great because we're seeing firsthand how Harry is responding to Dexter's sudden increased interest and like uh enthusiasm for the whole process or whatever. Is like
Yeah.
he's and you can see it kind of eats Harry because Harry eats Harry up because he's like, I technically gave him the green light, but you can see the regret. He's like,
Yeah.
I kind of wish I hadn't, but he's like, I was also gonna die, so
Well, I kind of wonder because Harry says he's like, you need to tell me about every single step you take. And so I
yeah.
kind of wonder if Harry is going to be a lot more involved in these kills. He wanted to go with Dexter on this kill.
That one super surprised me.
Yeah.
And again, going back to what I said earlier about what we know about from the original series, where he eventually does see Dexter kill someone,
Yeah.
and I think they're gonna take their time. My
Yeah.
original thought was this season was gonna build to that moment, and that was gonna be the end
Okay.
of the season. But I no
Interesting.
longer really think that's the case, which is why I
Yeah.
think there's gonna be a second season.
Sure.
But we know it's inevitable. We know it's going to happen. So I was really
Right.
surprised when he was like, "I'm coming with you," and I was like, "Oh, I don't think you want to do
I don't
that."
think you want to do that.
And he obviously talked him out of it. And I
Yeah.
think that's for the best because I think if he had seen what he did to Tony Ferrer, it would have been the fucking end.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Well, that's something about that kill, right? Is that, we can kind of talk about the ending here is that he so the first time he kills the nurse, he takes her as a complete body to the water
Hmm.
and like takes her earrings or whatever. And with this kill, instead of stabbing through the chest, he cuts him across the throat and then he chops his body parts up. And so it's
At the
kind of
very
a
least, he decapitates him.
at the very well, I thought I saw him
Oh yeah, well
throw
yeah.
the
So his
arm in
arm floats
separate
up.
from
Yeah,
the
yeah. So
chest and all that.
this is the first time he's actually he's actually like cut up the body, not to the
Yeah.
same extent as he does later in life,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Right.
yeah. He cuts off the arms, presumably the legs and the head.
Right.
In fact, I was wondering if because like they don't show the killing blow, they just kind of show it from the angle, so you can see the blood like splash up.
Yeah.
I was like, did he just like cut his head off in like one swipe?
One swipe.
Because he was
Yeah.
that thing was it was like a
That was a
fucking machete. It was like a machete.
yeah.
Um, so they weren't really clear about that, but you can definitely see
Yeah.
like his bloodlust is getting a little bit more intense. Um,
Yeah. We get that shot. I think it was excellent acting from Patrick when he throws or when he cuts his throat and the blood splatter goes up and you see
gets in his
all of
teeth.
these. Yeah, and you see all of these emotions play across his face. At first, he's like shocked. He's like, ah! And then he's like, oh, and then he like,
And then he's
it,
happy.
yeah, and there's like, it's like shock and then like bloodlust and then ecstasy and relief all just kind of plays across
Mhm.
his face. I think he did a really, really good job of showcasing that because he doesn't say anything.
Yeah,
You just see it all on his face, which I think
yeah,
is pretty
that was
cool.
really cool moment. And just a really cool shot in general,
Yeah,
like the blood like hitting him in the
yeah.
face and stuff. Also like
There
that whole kill scene, even though again I think it was a bit of it escalated very quickly from like not knowing what he was doing to knowing what he was doing. What was that? Okay, so he escalates very quickly, but like
Yeah,
like Pat's performance in that
yeah.
scene was so Michael C. Hall, like so Dexter. Like I loved that he was like waking him up by throwing like putting him up against the wall
Yes.
and throwing the balls at him.
And the ball
Um,
hits his cheek and like cuts his cheek where he'll later get the
yeah,
blood sample from. Oh,
that was a cool little
little
touch
nod.
there. But
The
yeah, and
only
then just his dialogue, I think in that scene was really cool too.
Yeah, his dialogue was amazing. It was very Dexter. The only thing I really didn't like about this kill was
Mhm.
that he did it in the highlight arena. I'm
Yeah.
like, how is there not like cameras or like a midnight janitor or something like
So you're right. And here's what I've always kind of said because I think people tend and I understand why. I mean, but I feel like people tend when they watch any show, probably people just kind of have this tendency to like apply real world
sure,
the way things work in the real world to what they're seeing on the screen. And in
right,
some cases, it makes sense.
sure,
Dexter, from like almost the very beginning, there's been a certain amount of like
suspension of
surrealness.
disbelief.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's like it's like a surreal element to kind of like the way everything works. That like
Yeah.
we're doing it for the sake so we can give the audience something really juicy to watch.
Right.
Like in season 7, he kills a guy in an airport
Oh, that's right.
in the lost and found baggage room.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
hauls his body out in a surfboard case.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like it's an amazing scene, but
Yeah.
you have to suspend your disbelief because for the
Right.
sake of like giving you the juicy stuff.
That's very
Like
fair.
some of the best kill scenes in the original series also, like there's some like if you apply real world logic to them, it doesn't make any fucking sense. Like the scene where Deb walks in on him in the original series.
Yeah.
Like the logistics of him just choosing that place as a kill room, hoping that nobody would come in, is just terrible. It's a terrible idea. But he
Right.
is so. I also like to think of it in terms of like. But in that case, he is so stuck in his own ways of like he's obsessed with kind of like the symbolism of everything. He was like, well, this guy
Right.
was a religious murderer. Of course, I'm
Yeah.
gonna kill him in a fucking church. Like
Right.
he's so cocky. He's like, I can get away with anything at this point, so I'm gonna do that, and it ends up costing him so much. But like,
Right.
you have to kind of suspend your disbelief. So, but like
Yeah, that's
again,
fair.
this is like his
That's
second
fair.
kill ever. So like, it's a little
Yeah.
crazy that he would be like, I'm gonna like go in the dead of night and set up a kill room in the middle of this huge arena.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but it was cool.
It was
So,
cool as fuck, dude.
it was
I
cool as
loved
fuck.
it. I
Um,
loved it.
you know, and I'm sure there's gonna be more moments like that. But it's just like
Sure.
if you're watching it and you're like in the moment, you're like, this is fucking rad, and then later you're thinking about
Sure.
okay, but maybe he shouldn't
Yeah.
have done that. It's like it is what it is, I guess.
Right. Yeah. For sure. For sure. Well, that kind of wraps up our third episode. We hit
Mhm.
all of the major points. We've talked
Mhm.
about how good the casting is and just how much he embodies Michael C. Hall, and I'm loving this so
I'm
far,
glad
man.
I'm glad that you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
And I totally get the the hesitation. I mean, I certainly was hesitant at first. Like
Yeah.
this show means so much to me,
Yeah.
and I want it to do well. And obviously, they've struggled with the ending a little bit.
Sure.
But so far they've made a case for like the existence of this show, and
Yeah.
I will say this: I don't after watching the fourth episode, I still feel the exact same way. I think it's continuing to get to be like they have not wavered yet in terms of like the
That's so
writing, the
good.
quality, the casting, the acting. Like I think it feels it feels really cool to be excited about new episodes of Dexter every week
Yes.
again. Um,
Oh my
so I
God.
certainly, I was like thanking my lucky stars for New Blood, even though I
Yeah.
knew it was like 10 episodes and then it's over again.
Yep.
And never thought in a million years here we'd be.
I know.
Um,
What an incredible like gift to fans is that we get this show and then immediately after we get Resurrection, and at
yeah,
the end of all of this we'll have to do a theories video on
yeah,
Resurrection or something, 'cause
absolutely.
dear God,
Uh,
I'm so excited.
I mean, it's you think about this too. Like by the time we convene again to talk about Original Sin again,
Yeah,
there's likely to be more information out there about Resurrection.
bro,
Like
Resurrection. Yeah.
the only thing we know about Resurrection so far is that Michael C. Hall is returning,
Yeah.
and it is a continuation of that story. We know
Right.
literally, and there's been rumors that it takes place in New York City,
Ooh, okay.
which is that's exciting.
Yeah.
But we know nothing, and it's supposed to start filming next week. When you think back to when Original
Yeah.
Sin was gearing up to start filming, like obviously John and Dexter Daly is keeping a close eye on all this stuff. So in turn, he's telling me all these things. So I feel like I'm kind of like I'm like watching all this shit unfold that maybe a lot of people aren't paying
Right.
super close attention to. But we knew so much about what the show was going to like, how they were going to be filming this show and
Yeah.
everything, and who was in it and all this stuff. Like a month, maybe 2 months prior to filming.
Yeah.
Starts filming next week, and we
Jesus
know nothing.
Christ.
So tomorrow there could be news. We have no
Yeah.
idea.
That's so exciting.
Because
That's
they're
so
gonna
exciting.
start trickling some of that stuff out. I think it's probably because they don't want to like they don't want to steal too much of Original Sin's thunder, so they're just kind of like keeping a lot of that stuff close to the vest. But once cameras start rolling, they're going to start talking about this, and that's exciting. So
oh man,
it's never thought we'd be here. It's exciting.
Yeah.
So
it's
I'm glad
so great.
I'm glad you're enjoying it. So
yeah,
it's always good to have someone I can talk to about it.
Yes, of course. Like I am loving this so far. Like I know that I have like my nitpicks and stuff, but on like if I was just like telling somebody about this show, those nitpicks would not be in the conversation. Like this is only because we are going deep on it. Like overall, I am loving Original Sin.
And I think, so and I'm really surprised. I'm pleasantly surprised. I was worried a lot of people were going to be very insistent on just like not getting on board.
Yeah.
But people seem to be responding to it very well.
Well, didn't this like break records for Showtime or something?
It did.
I saw something about that.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what the parameters of that like record were, but like it was something. I think it had to do with like it was the best first episode or best pilot episode of a new series for Showtime, which I know is a technicality because it's technically a sequel series, but they're treating it like a new series. There's all the the verbiage matters, I guess.
Right.
So, and that they'll reframe these things to make it seem maybe more important.
Amazing. Yeah.
But Dexter in general has always been a huge, like it's their like white whale, right, or their cash cow or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's doing very well. It's people seem to be who are watching it week to week are really enjoying it. And I think that's all I really could have asked for. I think it could have been a disaster. It
could have been a disaster.
It could have been a disaster, and I say that as someone who, even if it was a disaster, I'd be watching it.
Oh yeah,
but
for sure.
Luckily, I don't think that's the case, and I'm happy the way it's going so far. I guess we have to just kind of kick back and wait and see where it goes. But right now, all signs point to this is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's so nice to be enjoying a new Dexter show.
And Dexter as a whole, to your point, it's a series that's easy to nitpick.
Yeah.
But like just the concept, the character, the backdrop, just the conceit, the narrative framing, the whole thing is compelling. So those nitpicks it at the end of the day don't matter a whole lot. So
right. Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me. I know that you're past your time, and I appreciate you staying and talking some Dexter with me. And I'm really excited to chat with you next week. If you're down to do it next weekend. I don't know what your schedule is, but I can't wait to talk about 4 and 5 with you whenever we meet up next.
There will be a break in the season because they did do 2 episodes last week.
Sure.
I don't remember if it's between episodes 5 and 6 or between 6 and 7. It's one of those.
Oh, okay. Do you know how many episodes are in the season?
Yeah, 10.
Oh, 10. Okay.
Yeah, I think 10. I think you can safely assume that 10 is kind of the standard at this point. Like, Game of Thrones, all the, House of the Dragons, all 10 episodes. Although not always the case. The second season of The Last of Us is apparently 7 episodes.
Oh, that sucks.
But apparently one of those episodes is like 2 hours long.
Okay.
So, and also like the new season of Stranger Things is like 4 episodes, but they're all like 2.5 hours long. Like it's
weird.
like 4 movies. Like networks are doing crazy things, but the kind of like standard these days, I think most shows are like 10 episodes. I think that's kind of the kind of where everyone's falling at this point.
Interesting. All right. Well, thank you so much for hanging out, and
thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'll do the outro here. Guys, we are going to wrap it up there. Be sure to follow Nick over on Twitter and check out the 4-Player Podcast and Dexter Daily using the links in the description. I'll also give a shout out to Dexter Unwrapped. They are a new, brand new Dexter podcast that is going through Original Sin. There are these 2 girls that are, I would say probably mid-20s, young 20s, something like that, and they've gone through the main series what it sounds like is that they've gone through the main series for the first time and are now going through Original Sin.
Sweet.
And it's super fun just to hear like some fresh voices on Dexter and some fresh.
I will check that out.
Theories. Yeah, they're really cool. They're on Spotify. They're on YouTube. They're a new podcast. Their audio quality isn't fantastic, but they're fun to listen to, and I think they're smart.
I've been there. That's a struggle for all new podcasts.
Yeah, for sure.
Quick shout out too on that note.
Yeah.
A favorite podcast of mine since I don't even remember when I jumped on board. This was back in maybe season 5 or 6 of the original series, but I jumped on board and I'm still participating with this and being on and when I can or whenever they ask me on or whatever. But Dissecting Dexter is another great one.
Oh yeah.
It's a one-man show. Gareth does the show from the UK, and he's just the nicest dude in the world, and he knows so much about Dexter, and he loves the show. His mantra is trust the show.
Yeah, trust the show.
And he takes feedback from people every week, and he's just one of those really nice people who he invites everybody to share their opinion, whether it's good or it's bad, and he gives everybody equal attention and responds to everybody's thoughts and everything. And it's a great show. So I would also encourage you to check out that. But I will check out Dexter Unwrapped. That sounds. Yeah. I'm always looking for new Dexter podcasts to listen to. So.
Yeah, they're great, and I'll second Dissecting Dexter. I've heard some of your episodes with him, and they've been awesome.
Fantastic.
But yeah, so we'll be back with our usual Fantasy Files stuff, like our books and stuff, after the first of the year, or maybe like the second week of January or something.
Oh yeah, Happy New Year to everybody.
Oh yeah, Happy New Year, Merry belated Christmas, all that. But I think you can expect these Dexter episodes pretty frequently. I think we're going to do another one next weekend, schedules permitting, so we're going to try to have these out fairly frequently. But let us know what you've thought of Dexter Original Sin so far in the comments, or reach out over on Twitter, Discord, or Patreon, which are all linked below. And if I didn't say it already, Nick's links are down below as well. You can go check him out there. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one, and until next time, follow the code and stay hungry.
Fantastic.